This program is brought to you by First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues. Tonight we thought to take a look at the tourism sector, not from the high policy level as we have done in the past, but from the vantage point of those who are a little more hands-on within the industry. Those who know the contrasting activities offered by Botswana's range of flora and fauna, from its wet north to its dry southernmost tip. Permanent water sources like the Okavango Panhandle see less predators and will appeal to those seeking some tranquility and harmony. Whereas the more complex systems of Lenyanthi provide an ecosystem that is sure to please those seeking some wild predator action and some kills. The flat, dry expanses of the Central Kalahari Game Reserve offers views of distant, isolated thunderstorms, while the relatively smaller Tuli allows scenic views of lower plains on its undulating landscape. The seasoned operator will know which areas of this country are ideal for inexperienced horse riders and which will excite the more advanced. The same goes for novice fishers versus the more experienced fly fishers probably looking to snag some tiger fish. We have previously showcased the unique value proposition of the often overlooked Kalahari Desert. And tonight we do the same for the beautiful Lenyanthi, with the help of consultant Claire Doolan. What would you say is the unique offering or product offering that Lenyanthi has to offer?
Well, like the Chobe Riverfront in the Savuti region, we have these huge densities of elephant during the drier winter months. And we also have really good predator sightings coming out of the Lenyanthi as well. And I think there's been an awareness outside of Botswana of the incredible wildlife that we do have in the Lenyanthi through documentary filmmakers who've produced a lot of work out of the area. But really what sets the Lenyanthi aside, I would say, from those other areas who also have similar abundant wildlife populations, is that it's truly a unique and exclusive area to go on safari. So although you do have more affordable camps or more upmarket camps elsewhere in Botswana, like in the Okavango Delta, in the Lenyanthi everything is actually quite high-end and exclusive. So it's a very remote corner of Botswana that's hugely wildlife abundant, where you can really go in and experience these vast, untouched tracts of wilderness. And really feel like you're the only person out there in the bush. So for Botswana, that's pretty much what people come here to experience in any case. Yeah. But the Lenyanthi is where it really gets taken to the extreme.
What kind of traveller would you say the Lenyanthi attracts, and what type of traveller would most appreciate a visit there?
Well, I think anyone would appreciate a visit to the Lenyanthi. It's just whether they have the means to get there. So, you know, there are other compromises for people who can't afford to visit the Lenyanthi, who have a more limited budget. But generally, the Lenyanthi attracts a very, you know, someone who has pretty much an infinite budget for travel. It's someone who's going for that ultimate bucket list safari experience. And if people can't afford that in order to visit the Lenyanthi, there are other areas such as the Chobe Riverfront or Savuti, which again have fantastic numbers of wildlife, but what you trade in terms of exclusivity, you make up for in terms of not having to spend as much money.
What type of trends have you seen recently? We've just learned that the Botswana tourism environment, actually the actual environment is quite mercurial. You know, it's dry for decades, it floods for another. What have been the developments and changes in Lenyanthi, and what kind of activities have you seen as a result?
You mean in terms of the changes in water levels and seasonality and whatnot in the area?
Yeah, and offering.
Well, I think for quite some time it's been generally accepted that the water levels in the Lenyanthi can be quite unpredictable. You do have a number of different waterways in that area because it connects the Okavango Delta, you know, the spillway connects the delta up to the Lenyanthi swamps. The Zib Lagoon connects to Savuti via the Savuti Channel. You also have you know, the Kwando River, which changes name at the fault line and becomes the Lenyanthi River and later feeds the Chobe River. So you've got a number of very different waterways that are all affected by different elements in terms of when and how they receive water. A few years ago, you know, there has been more of an attempt to make use of the cylinder spillway by offering canoe trails along the spillway, but we've seen now as the water levels have started to drop in that area in the last few years that the season for that has become more limited. So the months during which that activity can be guaranteed have become fewer. But as a result of that, people have become a little bit more creative. So now they've turned that into more of a walking and canoeing trail experience as well. So again, it's become about trying to offer an emphasis outside of the straight game drive routine that you can often find in Botswana, which I really enjoy about the Lenyanthi. Or if you're not as adventurous as wanting to get into a canoe, then you can go out on a boat. And especially with those huge numbers of elephant that you do get, it's like having your own private version of the Chobe Riverfront in the winter months, where you can just drift out and be surrounded by hundreds of elephants crossing the water in the evenings, which is lovely as well.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world, because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
Thank you for staying with us as we continue to take a look at some unique product offerings within Botswana's tourism sector. As a sales and product manager, what would really make your life easier if the average traveler understood? What misconceptions do you find yourself frequently up against?
I think the fact that, you know, there are other countries other than Botswana where the game viewing can be easier. And by that, what I mean is you have fenced off areas with a certain wildlife population in them and guides who already have their finger on where each and every animal is. And Botswana really is about giving people that sense of a true, pristine, untouched wilderness. And as a result of that, it isn't a zoo. So I think as long as people are prepared to relax and just kind of take each day as it comes and enjoy what crops up in the bush, then they'll have a much richer experience for it than if they're coming with a tick list of things that they absolutely need to see.
Going forward, how do you see the product offering of Botswana's tourism evolving? What new things do you see in the future?
Well, from conversations I've had more recently, I've seen people wanting to, well, they've asked me a lot of questions about how can we offer more experiences beyond just a safari in Botswana. And I would love to see, and I think some people are offering it, a bit more of a diversity in terms of the tourism product. So it doesn't have to all be about sitting on the back of a game drive vehicle. It can be something as simple as having a romantic bush brunch set up out there, you know, with lanterns underneath the stars. Or it could be something entirely different again, which isn't just focused on safari. And although this isn't the Lenyanthi, you know, if you take areas like the Makgadikgadi salt pans, for example, which are less of the focus on wildlife and more on adventure and landscape, I think we're starting to see more of a demand in the market for those alternative experiences and memories that people will really take back with them beyond just what wildlife they've seen.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world. Because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
Thank you for staying with us. A strong case has been made in recent weeks as to the influence of the National Business Conference taking place this September. It has been described as a results-driven and critical meeting between government and the private sector. It is at the very same NBC that further structures that ensure collaboration between these two important sectors of the economy, such as the High-Level Consultative Council and others, that guarantee more frequent discussions tackling issues within Botswana's business landscape, have been forged. What sets this biannual meeting apart is that it does not only focus on the immediate concerns of the business community, but on longer-term goals for Botswana's overall economy. Past objectives such as the liberalization of trade as well as privatization were eventually made national areas of concern. The goal this year is to chart a clear path for Botswana moving from an upper middle income to a high income economy. A theme we further unpack with returning guest Dichaba Molobe of Business Botswana.
The theme is about making the transition from where we are, upper middle income economy, to high income. And there's a need for us to make that transition. We've been stuck in this status, in this classification, for the last 10 years or more. So it's important for us to move on, to move to the future. And there are a number of reasons why we should do that. I think the most important one is to allow us to create prosperity. And out of prosperity, then we also will be able to create jobs. If you look at the past few years, I think on average, formal employment, we have only been creating about 1,200. And that's not good enough for an upper middle income country. And compare that with how many people we get out of our tertiary institutions, maybe about 40,000 a year. So we have this ticking time bomb. It's important for us to generate opportunities, and we can only do that if we accelerate the pace of economic growth. And if you look at high-income economies, they are able to offer opportunities to people who are looking for them, either employment or business opportunities. So for us, this is an imperative. It's something that we really have to think about, and seriously, for that matter.
What is the private sector's role in moving Botswana into a higher income economy?
The private sector's role will be pivotal to this task of moving from where we are to high income. And it is only the private sector that can create jobs. Sometimes we think it's government, but if you look at literature globally, so even in this case, we are looking at the private sector, taking this prominent role in economic activity and employment creation. We look at government as providing that framework, that foundation, which is conducive for the private sector to create economic activity, to create jobs and wealth. And in my book, not in my book, but just looking at evidence, it can't be government, because they just don't have the discipline that you would have in a market economy. In the market economy, it's either you trade or you die. Yeah. But with government, whether you trade or die, or whether you trade or not, you still survive. So that's why it's important for us to look up to the private sector to do that. Other countries have tried a state-led model, but the evidence is out there, it doesn't work.
Which ways do you see us moving into a higher income economy? Is it through more sophisticated jobs? Is it through mass job creation? What distinguishes a middle income economy from a high income economy with regards to the type of jobs and skills and industries that are created?
I think in the short to medium term, it will have to be mass employment so that we are able to absorb unskilled and the semi-skilled. As I say, there are a lot of people who come into the labor market, and we must be able to provide job opportunities for them. So I would say unskilled and semi-skilled. And then at a later stage, we can move into the sophisticated space of ICT, financial services, and the like, in insurance. There's an urgent need for us to absorb the people who are coming onto the labor market. Yeah. So only the private sector, by the way, the private sector, and not government. Yeah. I think we need to underscore this all the time. But government has a very important role to play. I'm not trying to minimize the role of government. Very important role to play in ensuring that we have good regulations that don't act as a barrier to investment, but that allow us to thrive. I think that's how we should look at it.
That said, government has its role, the private sector has its role. What do you think will be the key conversations regarding moving Botswana into a high-income country that will take place in September? Which roadblocks, which policies would really bring about the most rewards for the business sector and the private sector?
I think almost immediately I have two in mind. One is, are we prepared to be open, to be an open economy that allows skills and investment, or do we want to be insular, just looking inward? Yeah, that's something that we need to address ourselves. And the other thing is, are we prepared to be bold? Make some bold reforms. Because sometimes we say things and put them into a plan, but then we lack, I think, the gut to go big, as it were, and be bold. I think what we need now at this stage is to do things differently and boldly. Yeah, bold reforms, and not baby steps. Yeah, I think that's something that we need to. I think we need to make that decision, whether we want to go big, bold, or not.
What type of reforms would you consider as bold? Which ones would really shake things?
One simple one is just deciding that if you are looking for a permit, if you are applying for a permit, whether it's a trade license or environmental impact assessment or a trade license, whatever license, where we can agree that you should be able to get it in 10 days. Let me say 5. You get it in 5 days. The system says after 5 days, you should be able to get your permit. And if they don't come back to you, you should consider that they have approved. You won't have to. You won't have to be in a situation where you don't know whether you are coming or going. Yeah, you know that after 5 days, you go ahead with your investment. That would be bold, and it's happening in other countries.
Despite the regulations, does the private sector in Botswana have as you were saying, the impetus? You're saying what separates private sector from government is that the private sector needs to trade or die. Yeah. Do you feel like, given the right environment, the private sector, as it stands, could really bring about the much needed growth?
Yeah, we have no other option but the private sector as our savior, if you like. So the private sector, I think, has it within itself to be the engine of growth. And I think they're already doing a lot. The private sector is doing a lot. You know, if you look at the makeup of the economy, even formal employment, I think it's almost a 50-50 ratio. So the private sector is already doing a lot. Now, can you imagine what they would do with a conducive business environment? Yeah, they will do much more.
Welcome back to the show. Thapelo Muribame of the Botswana Stock Exchange has previously weighed the pros and cons of investing in both shares and in bonds. This evening, she returns to profile yet another investment product in the form of exchange-traded funds, or ETFs.
One of the products that we have at the BSE is the exchange-traded funds, ETFs like we normally call them. What this is it's a structured product that meets the needs of investors. We currently have 4 ETFs at the BSE. But what an ETF is essentially is that it's a security that tracks the price, or it tracks there's always an underlying product or commodity to it. But it has the same characteristics as that of shares. So when you invest in an ETF, you know that you are getting access to a product that you would, normally not have access to, for example. Now we have 4 exchange-traded funds. We have the New Gold, which tracks the price of gold. We have New Plat, which tracks the price of platinum. And we have Core Shares. Core Shares is 40 top performing companies at the JSE. And we also have a fixed income ETF. Advantages that are associated with investing in ETFs. ETFs give you exposure or access to an underlying product that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. For example, they're very transparent in the sense that you know what the underlying asset is and you know what you're buying into. There's also an element of diversification in there because we have different ETFs that are listed at the BSE. And ETFs are easy because they're tradable on the stock exchange. So as an investor, if you want to buy ETFs, you simply approach any of our brokers.
This program was brought to you by First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?